In 2012, a young director by the name of Damien Chazelle would write a screenplay for a movie titled Whiplash. This screenplay would ultimately get rejected by numerous studios as they believed the film, centered around intense jazz and drama, would not sell well. It wasn't until
the first person at all to come on, weirdly enough, was Blumhouse,
who would pick up the film after witnessing a small snippet. Blumhouse is a studio more known for their works in the horror genre. Think of films like Sinister, Insidious, Get Out, and one of my personal favorites, Creep.
That's Peach Fuzz. That's just Peach Fuzz. The name is Peach Fuzz.
Damien Chazelle began his career as a screenwriter for hire, frequently contributing uncredited work while also penning scripts for films like The Last Exorcism Part 2, Grand Piano, and 10 Cloverfield Lane. In his early works to break into the industry, he pitched horror concept to Blumhouse. Though he ultimately didn't land these jobs, he got the opportunity to meet Cooper Samuelson. Eventually, Chazelle passed Samuelson the script for Whiplash, a move that would set the entire project in motion, and in that moment, a seed was planted that would later influence
a guy who I knew
everything
there
else.
Read it and liked the script. Didn't really see how it would fit into their model, but knew Jason Reitman's producer. So sent it to Jason Reitman's producer, and then Jason Blum and Jason Reitman wound up kind of with their producers, Helen Esbrook and Cooper Samuelson, wound up becoming the producing unit.
Ed Cooper Samuelson, who's not here today, he's the head of production. He found the script. And he thought it was terrific, and he gave it to me. I thought it was okay, and I said, we're never making this because it doesn't fit into what we do, contradicting everything I just said in this panel right now. Jason Reitman is one of my favorite directors, and he knew a woman who worked for Jason, and he kind of slipped her the script, and she gave it to Jason, and Jason agreed to produce it, and he came hopping back in my office. And that was how it started, but then I really think...
Originally it began with a feature-length screenplay that I was trying to, get off the ground, and it was largely based on experiences that I'd had as a jazz drummer myself with a very tough conductor and in a very kind of cutthroat sort of world, a world that made music feel like life or death.
That's been your fucking problem the whole time. The C4, damn it! Look at me.
And so I wrote this script, and for sort of obvious reasons, had trouble convincing people to finance a jazz drummer movie. So we gave the script to J.K., who very charitably signed on for a short with no guarantee that it would lead to even a feature.
Jason Reitman sent me the script for the short and the feature film of this thing called Whiplash by this kid nobody had ever heard of. First of all, I read this script. It is, up there with, A Few Good Men, Juno. It's up there with the most brilliant things I've ever read and potentially had the opportunity to be a part of, including Shakespeare and everything else I did over the years.
We shot the first kind of extended rehearsal scene in the studio band room where Andrew was first kind of inducted.
2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Christ!
I did not know they allowed retards into Schaefer. Am I to believe?
Painfully into that world, and we shot it, and that kind of helped get the ball rolling. I mean, it was basically exactly a year later that we were shooting the feature with Miles and J.K. and
he cut the script into an 18-minute excerpt, which then turned into a short film. The short starred J.K. Simmons and his fill-in actor playing the role of Andrew Neiman.
We took the short to Sundance to kind of again help give it a platform, and Miles was there that year with The Spectacular Now, which is another wonderful film of his. And I remember going to your Q&A at the Eccles Theater, where we later premiered Whiplash, sitting in the audience, silently planning my moves. And
It worked.
Like
you got me,
in the
baby.
audience, yeah.
Oh man, you reeled me in.
With the backing of a studio and the success and attention it garnered in the Sundance Film Festival, the movie got greenlit, giving Chazelle both a tight budget and a chance to turn his screenplay into a feature film. Whiplash is a film that delves deep into the exploration of ambition, obsession, and the price of greatness. It asks difficult questions about whether true excellence can only be achieved through pain and sacrifice, and whether the relentless pursuit of perfection is worth losing everything that makes us human. The relationship between Andrew, the main character, and Fletcher is a psychological battlefield. One where both characters push the other to extremes. One in the name of artistry, and the other in the name of control.
If you make one fucking mistake, one, I will drum your ass back to Nassau where you can turn pages until you graduate or fucking drop out.
Andrew Neiman is one of the most compelling yet tragic characters. His journey is marked by intense obsession, and self-doubt speaks to anyone. He's a character you can look at and instantly feel the sense of relatability. The kind of guy you see and go, dude. That's literally me. At the core of his character is his fundamental desire to be great, to stand amongst the ones who came before him and etch his name in the history books. He's a flawed character, but honest at most. Someone not meant to be admired uncritically, but rather understood. Andrew gives up nearly every aspect of a normal life. He cuts off his romantic relationship.
This is why I don't think that we should be together.
Distances himself from his family and friends.
You will never hear from the NFL.
And begins to see anyone not aligned with his goal as an obstacle. Physically, he punishes his body through relentless practicing. Drumming until his hands bleed. Taping up wounds only to break them up again. And mentally and emotionally submitting everything he has to Terrence Fletcher. Through it all, Andrew sacrifices his health, relationship, and identity, driven only by the need to master his craft no matter the cost. By the end of the film, he no longer resembles the person he once was. He has become something singular, transcendent, and perhaps irreparably broken. The way he sees it when it comes to success and in his character traits? Well, it's quite simple. Whiplash, specifically Andrew's journey, is something I deeply relate to. His character embodies the kind of obsessive drive that mirrors my own desires and ambitions. The intensity of his journey, the pain, the sacrifice, the obsession resonates with me deeply, and watching his story never fails to ignite something in me. His level of commitment and lengths he's willing to take to perfect his craft, no matter how destructive it is something I understand. It speaks to the intensity of wanting to achieve something extraordinary, even if it means giving up everything else. And it's something that begs the question,
Because I want to be great.
There'll be no silverware.
And you're not.
I want to be one of the greats.
how far are you willing to go to be great?
There are very few people who can deal with the pressure and the stress that happens when we're there.
I feel I'm the best ever.
I am the greatest fighter of all time.
There's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart, I want to eat his children. Praise be to Allah.
LeBron James with no regard for human life.
I've lost my mind on this game, yeah?
There is no tomorrow.
I too have the power of a god.
Because I'm going to be greater than any of them.
But the truth is, I'm really in pursuit of greatness. I know people don't usually talk like that, but I want to be one of the greats. I'm inspired by the greats.
Friedrich Nietzsche was a German philosopher and cultural critic whose work challenged traditional morality and Christianity. He's known for his existential ideas, emphasis on power and life. He spoke extensively about the desire to be great. Though not in a shallow or material sense, his philosophy centers around the pursuit of individual excellence, self-overcoming, and the creation of one's own values. In his works, The Will to Power, thus spoke Zarathustra, and through the concept of, well, this, which translates to self-overcoming, he argues that the fundamental human drive is not survival or pleasure, but the will to power, the profound urge to grow, to transcend limits, and to assert oneself both creatively and fundamentally. This idea embodies an ideal human, one who creates their own values, defies societal expectation and achieves greatness through discipline and inner transformation. For Friedrich, greatness is not given, it is forged through struggle. To become truly exceptional, one must embrace suffering, confront chaos, and overcome the weakness within. Having read and looked into this topic, I began to question what it is that fuels people in pursuit of greatness. Some people chase greatness because they want to be remembered, to etch their name into history and achieve a form of immortality through legacy. Others are driven by something quieter, a deep internal hunger for self-actualization. For them, it's not about applause or recognition, but about becoming who they feel they were meant to be. Greatness becomes a personal mission, to overcome, to escape, to silence the fear of being ordinary. You see it in Hercules' labor, Odysseus' journey, Icarus' fall, and Prometheus' defiance. Sometimes those desires collide. Sometimes a person wants both, to fulfill their deepest potential and to be remembered. Very few stories captures this duality, but one I always think of is the story of Achilles. Achilles was a demigod who from birth was destined to be the greatest warrior of his time, but his greatness came with a tragic price. A prophecy once told Achilles he had two paths: a long, quiet life without fame, or a short life that would be remembered forever. Naturally, he chose the latter, believing that eternal glory was worth the price of a brief existence. To protect him from this fate, his mother Thetis tried to make him immortal by dipping him into the river of Styx, a river that was told to grant immortality. Holding him by the heel, every part of his body became invincible, except the heel she held him by. This small spot would eventually become his downfall, and is the origin of the phrase you've probably heard of before, Achilles' heel. During the Trojan War, you know, the war with the famous wooden horse, Achilles So what can we take from this story? Well, for one, why didn't they just, you know, flip his body and dip his heel as well? I guess we'll never truly know. Achilles became a symbol of the heroic ideal, the pursuit of glory, excellence, and immortality. He chose greatness knowing it would cost him everything. Like modern characters today, Achilles sacrifices love, peace, and life itself in exchange for legacy, reminding us that greatness often demands everything and leaves us to wrestle with whether or not it's worth it. When it comes to the pursuit of greatness, obsession isn't optional, it's essential. You have to be consumed by what you're trying to achieve, so fixated that you're willing to give up anything and risk everything to get there. Now, no one's telling you to sacrifice a goat or do whatever the hell the Pacers were doing.
We only gave up, I don't even remember how many points, I think it was like 9. Yeah, that's not that bad, you know, if you think of it.
I've been thinking a lot about what exactly fuels that kind of obsession. Greatness is rarely born from balance. It comes from obsession, a singular, often terrifying need to become more than ordinary. But what that obsession looks like can vary. Some perfect, some dominant, some suffer, some vanish. All of them burn something to leave something behind. After some time reflecting, I narrowed it down to 4 core forces, each different on surface, but all deeply connect to one another. Perfectionist obsession is a compulsive and unrelated pursuit of flawlessness, not out of vanity or competition, but from a belief that one entire's worth is tied to output, discipline, and mastery. These are character in people like Zoro, obsession with becoming the greatest swordsman. Batman, pursuit of perfection in every aspect of his life. The great late Kobe, Mamba mentality, and the relentlessness that followed with that. Vegeta's obsession with being the strongest warrior in the universe is rooted in his pride as a Saiyan prince. They're driven by success and avoid failure at any cost. To those who suffer from it, it's a form of existential collapse. This obsession is rooted in an internalized belief that only through perfect execution can one be enough. The person is not simply trying to be good at something. They are trying to erase every shred of inadequacy, doubt, or vulnerability. Mistakes, however small, are catastrophic. Rest becomes guilt. Pride becomes transient. And often the closer they are to their goal, the more invisible it feels, because the bar just keeps rising. What makes perfectionist obsession unique is in its quiet, internal violence. An unyielding drive, not for the sake of greatness, but to escape the fear of being ordinary. This obsession fosters brilliance, pushing individuals to unimaginable heights of achievement, but it does so at a steep personal cost. At its core, those driven by this obsession are motivated by shame, plagued by an internal voice that is hypercritical and relentlessly self-punishing. They expect more from themselves than anyone else could ever.
Listen, suckers, and remember these words. When I play, the ball isn't my friend or any nonsense like that. It's merely a spherical servant that exists solely so I can shine. Whenever I'm out on the field, I'm the king.
That's one hell of an ego you've got.
Ego obsession is the need to dominate, to define, and to stand above everyone else. It stems from a desire not just to succeed, but to be exceptional, to be the central force in any room, the ultimate authority in any space. It is power, not as a means, but as an identity. This type of obsession is not always loud or boastful. It can be subtle, intellectual, even cold at times. But what defines it is the belief that to matter means to be unchallenged. It often forms in people who feel invisible, disrespected, or even powerless in some cases. They build themselves up by constructing identities around invincibility or dominance. This manifests in a superiority complex, zero-sum mentalities, and an inability to collaborate or surrender control. Instantly, when I think of the traits of this obsession, I think of characters like Oikawa from Haiku, Rukura from Slam Dunk, Miyamoto Musashi early on in the manga. Really any high-performing athlete. It's not enough for these individuals to be good. They must be the best, and others must see it. Every interaction becomes a silent competition. Every accomplishment stands as a testament to that individual. They often fear vulnerability because it undermines the illusion of control they've spent their lives building. To the ego-obsessed, greatness isn't optional, it's owned. The desire to etch their name into history stems from a deep need to be the center of a narrative. Legacy is not just an effect of their work, it's quite literally everything. They don't just want to achieve, they want to be the name others reference, imitate, and bow to. They'll do whatever it takes to not only succeed, but to dominate. This obsession is born from unresolved pain. It turns trauma into purpose, whether through vengeance, redemption, or just plain survival. The person doesn't pursue greatness for applause or for identity, but because they must do something with the weight of what's been done to them. Trauma-fueled obsession is grief weaponized. It takes the raw, often unbearable emotion residue of a past wound and channels it into a mission, a cause, or a relentless personal standard. It may come after a loss, betrayal, abuse, or injustice. Something that shattered that person's world and left a void that cannot remain empty. And that void is often filled with purpose. Unlike other obsessions, this one rarely starts with ambition. It starts with survival, and from there, it builds into something more dangerous. These individuals push themselves not to reach a goal, but to keep the past from consuming them. In this sense, the obsession is a coping mechanism, one that numbs the pain by drawing it in focus. Aang, the last Avatar. Rengoku from Demon Slayer. Daredevil, Punisher, Thorfinn. Their purpose isn't in the sense of greatness per se, but they often create work or acts of transformation so profound that they do leave a mark. They carve their place in history not because of a need or desire to be remembered, but because they refuse to be broken, and that defiance becomes legendary. Some characters chase greatness knowing it will cost them everything. Unlike perfectionists who fear failure, martyrs often embrace it, seeing death or ruin as a small price for transcendency. Technically, these characters are often exceptional, not just skilled, but emotionally impactful in their craft, whether through music, leadership, or performance. For the martyr, greatness doesn't come from being seen. It comes from giving everything. History remembers martyrs, not just for what they did, but for what they gave up. Their lives, their identity, their peace. Each obsession points to a different anxiety about morality and meaning. Greatness is ultimately about defying time, about becoming unerasable, whether through technical mastery, force of will, sacrifice, or relentless continuation. All of these obsession comes from an internal void, a hunger to prove, to survive, to matter, or to escape. But what sets them apart is the lenses through which the characters view the world and themselves. These stories aren't just about character arcs, they're psychological systems, often reflected through visuals, pacing, sound design, or narrative rhythms. The desire to be great is universal, but the form it takes and the price it demands is deeply personal. In the end, the desire to be great isn't about victory. It's about what you're willing to sacrifice to be remembered.